It's time for another installment of the Holistic Happy Hour with Devoya and Jason. The Holistic Happy Hour is dedicated to addressing the health and mental wellness of underserved communities of color. Join host Devoya and Jason as they quiz, question, and converse with cultural brokers, complementary healers, and other wellness providers and community folks. Let's step into it.
Welcome to the Holistic Happy Hour, a libation for your soul. Christina, are you familiar with the term libation?
I am.
And a libation for your soul, what would you think that would look like?
Oh my goodness, a libation for your soul. When I think about the way people might use a libation, they use it to relax. They might use it to get away from their troubles. As I think of a libation for your soul, I'm thinking of something that could do that for you, an activity, something like this podcast, with or without the alcohol.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Look at you. And, I'm a word file, and libation is one of my favorite terms, but it really is a salve. I mean, it might come in the context of a liquid, but it's a salve for your soul. And I think tonight I would really like to offer some information about the different things that we can use as a salve. And I really feel like the Holistic Center provides a lot of those things. So that is why you're here. But before we get into all that, I think it'd be great to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Do you want to know about me personally or professionally?
It's so vast and such an enjoyable topic. I'm going to let you maybe do a little bit of both so people get like the full breadth of Christina Alejo.
Sure,
I would like to
sure.
hear all the above a little bit, yeah.
Thank you. So personally, I grew up on the west side of Fresno County on a farm with lots of siblings and lots of pets as well. I come from an immigrant community, immigrant parents with a 3rd and 5th grade education, but who really taught us a lot about respect for people and a lot about the value of hard work. Professionally, my background is in mental health research, primarily in mental health disparities in communities of color, particularly Latino community. And then I focused more on making sure that the development of programs are culturally and linguistically sensitive, meaning that you can't just take a program that's created for one community and automatically assume that it'll work for a different community. So it's about that adaptation and then also program evaluation.
Because there's not really a one size fits all, which we've seen in the past not work. And so this is just a progression of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Holistic Center and how you became involved. You just mentioned your background. Maybe that has a little bit to do with it.
It does. So do you want the long version or the short version?
What version do we want tonight, Jason?
I would like to hear the long version, actually.
Okay.
All right.
Please.
And so I'll give you the brief. I'll start off specific and then backtrack a little bit.
Perfect.
So the Holistic Cultural and Education Wellness Center is a program of Fresno County Behavioral Health. So it is a mental wellness program. It's operated by the Fresno Center. That's a local nonprofit in Fresno. And the funding comes from the Mental Health Services Act. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. So the way that I got involved was actually before the program ever existed. And so what I mean by that is back in 2001, a colleague and I decided we wanted to start a chapter of Mental Health America here in Fresno. And so part of the work that we did, a lot of the work that we did was advocacy work around trying to identify a stream of money that could fund solely mental health. That was really important because mental health used to be funded alongside other programs, which were much sexier. And so when times were tough and they were going to cut programs, it was often mental health that got cut. And so Prop 63 grew out of that. It was passed in 2004, and that's what then became known as the Mental Health Services Act, and that's what currently funds the Holistic Center. So my work with the Holistic Center began through advocacy in trying to make sure that there were funding for mental health for programs such as these. And this particular program then grew out of a process that was mandated as part of this funding stream. What Mental Health Services Act wanted to do was to make sure that it wasn't business as usual, that people had a say in the types of services that they felt were relevant for their mental health. And so they hired my colleague and I to do a series of stakeholder meetings here in Fresno, again in Fresno County, so that people could have a say. And so the idea of the Holistic Center grew out of these stakeholder meetings along with other programs.
Can you back up a little bit and tell the listeners a little bit more about the Mental Health Service Act? Because I'm sure those of us who are of the voting age might remember who they taxed in order to achieve that funding and how that then gets divided amongst the different counties.
Sure. So back in 2004, I believe it was Daryl Steinberg that was championing that. And it was Prop 63 was a 1% tax on millionaires in California. And so this is a funding stream that is unique to California. It's statewide, and then it gets allocated to the different counties. So every county has their own pot of MHSA dollars, which is Mental Health Services Act dollars. And then within that pot of money, there are different categories. So for example, there was a pot of money designated for what they called innovation, which is how we were funded. And that is so that we could try new and different things that weren't currently part of the mental health system. Right now, we're funded under a second pot of money called Prevention Early Intervention. So this is our second round, and that's where we are right now. And then there's also money for like workforce education and development and other things.
California's an amazing state.
It is.
And that's not a dig. I'm sorry, Jason.
No, I was just thinking the same thing in the back of my head.
We have so many things available to us, and I was not even aware of this funding source prior to my arrival at the center. And I take great joy in saying that we are funded through, that 1% tax on
That's incredible. That's incredible. I love it.
It is. There's something like, and pardon me if I don't have the exact figures, but upwards of 300 programs that are funded through this 1% just in our county. So you can imagine how large that is.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of surprises most folks, especially because it's a nonprofit. People have a particular notion about how we're funded and whether or not it's a grant funded program, whether you have autonomy or you have some strict guidelines. And because our space is so flexible, and was in its first inception an innovative program, it throws off most folks, and they kind of really don't buy the fact that we're able to do the work that we're called to do. Yeah. Sorry, did you have a question?
It's pretty magical. I don't know. I'm just in awe. Like I've been so curious, and so I'm just, please continue.
Yeah, and it really is, as far as a participant goes, I think a lot of participants have that same response after the initial, are you sure this is free? Uncomfortable for some folks. Like, if something's free, sometimes we don't value it in the same way that we do if we have to pay for something. Especially, I will say on my end, I feel this is true, but especially for a lot of people of color, if there's something free, there's got to be, there's got to be okay, then what? So that we're able to provide some of the work that Christina's going to share with us. And that's great, but it's also our jobs to let folks know why it's available, how it became available, and that it's actually all legit. And we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes.
Yeah, and really the purpose of the center is really to support individuals and families in trying to live a well-balanced life, whatever that means for them, mind, body, spirit. We are whole human beings, and oftentimes we're asked to, go to one location for your physical health needs, and a second location for your mental health needs, and a different location to exercise, and a separate location for, every part of us is looked at as if we're segregated somehow. And we're not. We're a whole person. And so it's nice to come into a space where you can, come in and do a Zumba class, come in and do a cross-cultural workshop. Another day you can come into the healing garden and learn about the herbs that are in the garden and how you can use those for your wellness. And you walk
That's
into a
amazing.
space that visually, I wish we had a picture of the center. It's just a beautiful space. There's a very inclusive mural depicting Fresno County, people from all walks of life, all different ethnicities. So as soon as you walk into the space, the art, the mural, the surroundings tell you that you belong there.
That's
It's
amazing.
intentional. Let's not forget that. Oftentimes, we enter different spaces and we feel othered, and so it was a very intentional process in putting this space together and curating the art and making sure that there was symbolism and quiet and a library. Um, would you speak to how all of those things came to fruition? I believe you started working there a year after its inception or 2 years.
2 years after. So in 2012 was when it was initially funded, and I immediately applied for the director position. I was so excited that this had happened, right? Here we had been advocating for something like this. The community advocated for something like the Holistic Center. It then became a request for proposal on behalf of the county. This agency applied for it, and now it was there. And so I was first in line to be the director of this wonderful magical place, right? Here I had been, my schooling had been in psychology. I had then moved into applied psychology, which was the program development and looking at how do you create services that are culturally relevant. And now here was this opportunity. But I didn't get it. I didn't get it. So it was at that point, it was a promotion for someone that was already working at the agency. And interestingly enough, someone who sat on my interview committee said, you did a great job. I'd love for you to come and work for me. And so he hired me as the director of his little nonprofit in the rural community. And we provided services for the Holistic Center as a satellite site. So I didn't know at the time that myself and one other person providing these services in the rural community, we were providing about a third of the services for the whole agency. And here back at the main site,
You
we
were
had
the director anyway.
yeah, back at the main site, I didn't realize that the director that was there at the time was like, "Wow, this is amazing! You guys have real penetration into the community." And so she was there for a short duration. Ended up getting an opportunity of a lifetime for herself, and she recruited me to then be the director of the center. And so I've been the director since 2014. Everything is very intentional. We are charged with serving communities that normally are unserved and underserved. And we know that oftentimes those are communities that are marginalized as well, that experience additional barriers to care, and that also may be at greater risk of experiencing mental health concerns and not know where to go. And so when we hire our folks that work at the center, we call them cultural brokers. We want people that are well respected in their respective communities, people that are knowledgeable about resources, people that have a heart for community. And these folks come in and they serve as the go-between the people and the existing services and help to make those connections.
Thus the term cultural broker, which for me really resonated with me when I don't ever remember hearing that term previously, and when I went to the interview, that's the term that you used, and I immediately thought, wow, I wish I'd have thought about that. I feel like I am a cultural broker just in my daily life, um, and so that was the first draw. But then, kind of just looking around, looking at the mural, and thinking that style of art looks familiar, and like looking for the signature, and I'm like, oh, of course, it was Romero Martinez, and just recognizing that garden actually was the final key for me. I will never forget it. It was rainy, which is my favorite. It was a little cloudy. I was very somber because there there was a passing, and I sat in that garden and thought, I can do this. I have to grieve. I got to do what I need to do. And I don't know if you heard me say that. I don't recall saying it out loud, but you walked in and said, I want to offer you this. You can work from home while you grieve. Stay here. You let me stay in the garden. And I thought, okay, this garden is actually where I spend most of my time with the person that was in transition at the time. And so all those elements made me think, well, if this person has that sort of trust in me, you know, no work done thus far, then, and I already feel tasked to work in communities of color. It's all I've ever done, actually. Um, it was just a perfect storm, for lack of a better word, of things. And I'm just so glad to be there.
Thank you, Devoya. And if I may,
Thank you for listening to the Holistic Happy Hour. We'll see you next time with part 2. Cheers.